Welcome back to The Science of Wellness. Today's guest is someone who truly sits at the intersection of science, innovation, and impact in the health space. I'm joined by Susanne Mitschke, a clinical researcher, serial entrepreneur, and one of the leading voices in evidence-based consumer health. Susanne holds a Master of Public Health from Harvard, and her work spans rigorous clinical trial design, supplement validation, and a groundbreaking health tech. As principal investigator, she's led clinical trials across the wellness space, and as a founder, she's built transformative companies like MindMate, the world's #1 Alzheimer's app, and Citruslabs, a decentralized CRO empowering consumer brands to back up their health claims with real science. Susanne is not just building companies, she's building the future of consumer health research. In today's episode, we'll explore her business journey, how to spot evidence-based products in a noisy market, and the future of clinical trials in wellness. We'll also dive into what founders often get wrong about scientific validation, and then also how to bridge the gap between innovation and integrity. This is a conversation that is bound to be filled with clarity, honesty, and sharp insight. So get comfortable and let's get into it. Susanne, welcome on The Science of Wellness, and thank you for joining me on this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you.
I want to jump right in with you and start with, what does the word wellness mean to you personally, and how has your definition evolved over time?
That's a good question. And I also think it's a fairly hard question. Wellness is an interesting word because to me, it's more like being at peace with your body and with your mind, but it's also not really defined, right? What it actually means. It means a lot of things to many different people. And I think right now in our day and age, it means following protocols that some influencers are telling us we should do. And then, we achieve wellness. But in my opinion, that creates a lot of stress because many wellness activities create stress because the goal of these activities is that you feel well. But what if you don't, right? There are like a lot of like these wellness clubs, for example, that are very exclusive to get into. You have to apply, then you have to interview, and they are also fairly expensive. So, alone like that thought of, oh my God, I could not get into that wellness club and everyone else is in it, right? That creates stress, and stress, in my opinion, is not wellness. Wellness should be super accessible. Everyone can do it. It can mean to people like walking in a park or sitting by the ocean or hiking in a forest. And to me, the people that really nail wellness, people in Hawaii, they are eliminating stress altogether. Their biggest thing to worry about is if the waves are okay and if they are big enough to surf on. And they feel sad when they can only surf once a day instead of 3 times a day. So that is the wellness that we should all thrive for, right? We should not worry about things too much.
Oh, I love that. I wish we all lived in a world where we only had to worry about something as fun as surfing. What inspired you to move from your clinical research background into founding startups in the health space?
I've been an entrepreneur my entire career, and I like to solve problems and I like to challenge the status quo. And with everything I did, I'm still in clinical research, but at the same time, I founded startups around it. My first company was MindMate. It still exists. It was called by BBC the ultimate Alzheimer's app, and
That's amazing.
back in the days, it was the #1 Alzheimer's app on the market. And we had like times where we were ranked on the App Store above Weight Watchers. And then obviously there's the question, how do you monetize something like that, right? Especially if you are working with people who experience memory loss, it's a question on, do you want to charge a subscription? What if people forget that they are subscribed to your app? Is that ethically acceptable? And we decided that it's not. So we looked at ways to monetize this, and part of it was through research. So we placed individuals in clinical trials and then also became actively involved in designing clinical trials, executing clinical trials, collecting data for clinical trials. And that was mostly for like drug research. But then we also got into real world evidence research with MindMate, obviously from collecting data and using MindMate in clinical trials as a real-world evidence tool. We also went into qualitative interviews with specific patient populations, which was a lot of fun. And then COVID happened, and the entire kind of operation for clinical trials and real-world evidence for the pharmaceutical and biotech industry was shut down. And then we shifted to the health and wellness space because that was exploding at the time. Specifically in 2020, 2021, a lot of brands were created very successfully, and they all wanted to be differentiated, and many of them also wanted to show that their product is superior to other products on the market. And how do you do that? You do that with clinical trials, with validation, with claim substantiation. And I'm in LA, and a lot of brands are in LA, and a lot of my friends founded companies in that space and asked me all of these things about clinical trials and how much it should cost and how long they should conduct this study for. And then in 2020, I decided, or I just asked them if it would be okay if we would run these studies for them, because we've done that, numerous times before with actual drugs, right? And they were like, yeah, sure, why not? And I was very successful. And then they recommended us to other people in the industry. And this is how we were growing Citruslabs. But the company Citruslabs, so I have to say that while MindMate is the consumer app, Citruslabs has always been the clinical trial company. So it was not just founded in 2020.
You just mentioned on MindMate that you didn't charge a subscription for it. And that is amazing to hear the logic behind it. And it's great that you took that approach. Now, on MindMate specifically, what was your experience like building it? And then how did it shape your approach to consumer health innovation in the bigger picture?
So consumers, when you work with consumers, they often never intend to use your product like you want them to use a product. That was very interesting to see. Like we designed something, we created something, and then we launched it, and then we had an idea how they would use it, and then they used it differently. And it was very interesting to see like how this all happens and how they are perceiving the product. And I think that's also the case for like many health and wellness companies that are, consumer health companies in the end, that you never know how your user base is perceiving your product. So we created it for people with memory loss or who are concerned about memory loss, but that are already a little bit older. But then we also had a lot of people on there because the app is a mix of obviously brain games, but then also nutrition tips, recipes, like healthy recipes, and also exercises, workouts for older people that they can do, like very low impact, but it still gets your machine running, and it helps strengthen the body with like body weight exercises. So it's very accessible; everyone can do it at home. And then we found out that a lot of people between like 55 to 65 were using it specifically just for the exercises because they wanted to get in more shape. And we even had like one person who sent us a message that the app helped her greatly to manage her diabetes, which is great because she just followed all of our recipes and did the exercises daily.
That's amazing. And I love that you took a holistic approach to it. I want to shift focus a little bit to the clinical trials for supplements and wellness products. So, what do you think most founders in this space misunderstand about evidence-based validation?
So similar to what we have seen, like with people using using MindMate in a different way and also with different like indications than we intended to. I think a lot of health and wellness founders, they are thinking too much about their reviews and their case reports, because we don't know what these people are using and doing additionally to what their product does, right? So for example, a lot of brands come to us with, oh my God, this product helped with this health condition, with that health condition, right? But we don't know if the people that took the product and then told them that it helped them manage or get even like completely treat their health condition. We don't know if they took actual drugs as well, if they did like other lifestyle interventions, for example. And one thing that I think a lot of health and wellness founders get wrong is that supplements are not drugs. They are not meant to treat and cure, and they cannot make treat and cure claims. But on the other hand, when we conduct studies, oftentimes they want to see if their product can actually treat and cure a condition, and versus just, helping keep healthy people healthy, right?
Okay, especially now with the clinical trials, and how or what have you learned about building trust specifically with the consumers in the health space? And now you already mentioned that some founders actually say that some supplements can cure and treat something. Now, how can these brands actually start doing better?
So first, I strongly believe that supplements can absolutely help, but I don't believe that, for example, when someone has diabetes and it's just popping a supplement, that the diabetes will get better based on the supplement, right? I do believe it's, holistic approach to health. And I think that supplements can help and play a big role in this holistic approach. So for example, you take the supplement and then on top of that, you have, for example, a lifestyle intervention, for example, an exercise plan. And I do believe that some brands are doing a great job at pushing that, right? And pushing, for example, a healthier life on top of just, selling their supplement. They are selling kind of a lifestyle. And I think this is building trust, right? Transparency is building trust. And the more transparent a brand is, the more consumers are trusting them. And you're probably aware that the FTC changed guidelines around specifically health claims in the health and wellness industry. So before December 2022, everything was like the Wild West. And now we see like more regulation and the FTC really cracking down on unsubstantiated health claims and also on drug claims. For example, one of the Kardashians has like this GLP-1. She has a supplement and a weight loss supplement, right? And it's called something with GLP-1. And the FDA actually sent a warning letter because she can't make this claim, right? So this is very interesting to me because yes, you cannot make this claim, but the product might still help individuals together with, exercising and a healthy lifestyle to actually lose weight. And there are probably a lot of case reports that they have and a lot of reviews that are confirming what they are claiming, but this is not a clinical study, right? A clinical study is like in a controlled environment, and you have specific study design, you have specific methodologies that are all going toward what your hypothesis is, what you want to test. And then you also have a specific set of inclusion-exclusion criteria. And then, based on that, you're executing a study and then you get a result. And then you can essentially give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But another thing I want to mention is that what I'm seeing in the industry is because everyone is so scared about the FDA sending out letters, the FTC, but also the NAD, the National Advertising Division, sending out these letters, that a lot of attorneys get involved in research. And then oftentimes they are making too many changes that is setting up a study to fail. And that is, the opposite, obviously, of what a brand wants. Then, everything from a legal side is perfect, but the study design was changed in a way that the study is essentially garbage.
It's a good thing that the system is moving in that direction where they're trying to control more what the consumers are able to buy. And I think it's high time. Here in South Africa, there is currently nothing like that happening. And as soon as you walk into a health store, then you see all these brands, but you know they haven't been tested in any way. So you even write at the bottom of a supplement that this supplement was not tested for purity or for efficacy or anything else by this and this regulatory bodies. So it is a big problem, but we do have a long way to go. But while we are still on supplements, so as a consumer of these different brands, and especially the ones that are making very vague claims based on something, a third party clinical study, and it doesn't really say what clinical study was done or how it was done, like the methodologies. What can a consumer who doesn't have any idea about the science behind it, what can they look for when they purchase supplements?
So oftentimes when brands make claims without adding more details about the clinical studies, it means that it's ingredient studies. It can be that, for example, in the formulation, there might be an ingredient that's clinically tested, right? There are a lot of manufacturers that sell ingredients. So that could be the case, or they are just relying on general ingredient research. For example, when there's like vitamin B12 in it, and then there's a ton of research on vitamin B12, right? So then they can make essentially this claim that it was clinically tested. Yes, it was, but it was ingredient research. So one thing that consumers can do is they can ask, questions on what was the study about? Like, what was the main objective of the study to find out? How many participants were involved in the study?
Yes.
Also, who conducted the study, right? Was it a university? Was it a CRO like Citruslabs? Was it just, a friendly doctor? Something like that. And then also, how did they evaluate the outcomes? So methodologies, right? Study methodologies. Was it questionnaires? Did they involve biomarkers? Questionnaires are great, right? If it's a questionnaire only study, it can make a lot of sense for many different outcomes. So for example, if you have a product that should help you with focus and attention, right? Questionnaires are absolutely the name of the game, right? This is how you do that. If you have a study on sleep, questionnaires are essential. But then I would also want to see data from a sleep tracker, for example, especially if they claim that, time to fall asleep was shorter and overall, time asleep was longer, for example. And then also when you have specific claims around inflammation, for example, then I would like to see some biomarkers. Also, when you have a lot of like brands also make like absorption claims and things like that, and biomarkers can also help to substantiate these claims as well. And then another thing to check that I like is clinicaltrials.gov. This is a registry of clinical trials, and a lot of brands registering their study there. And then you can read a little bit more about like the entire study design, which is great. Some of them even publish study results on clinicaltrials.gov as well. And then also, does the brand has any publications? That's obviously, kind of the gold standard in having a publication in a peer-reviewed journal. And it is costly, unfortunately, to get into these journals because they charge also a lot, especially if it's open access. And you want a journal that is open access, because if it's not open access, you cannot read it. You have to pay for the article, right? And that's not what you want. So it can be like cost prohibitive, especially if a brand is not like super sciencey, right? They are thinking of, do I have to pay this now? Why? And then they might even just create their own white papers. And that is something that I'm seeing. Yeah, that's something that I'm seeing a lot of brands are doing now, which is great.
With a white paper, don't you think there's an internal bias for the brand because they want the white paper to substantiate that their supplement is working?
Yeah, but you have the same with journals, right? If you submit a manuscript, there's research on that. If you publish something, there are more positive articles out there than negative. So it also is a a lot of research can be spun, right? You can spin it in a direction as well, but you have that bias inherently with everything you do. But if you have the data to back up what you're claiming in the white paper, then why shouldn't you do it?
That makes sense. Yes, I've just read a few white papers and I thought, I almost think the results are too good to be true. But then you start looking at previous clinical trials for another brand, and then you start seeing, okay, but it was relatively the same ingredients, so it might make sense that the brand is just optimizing what they are doing. But yeah, white papers, definitely. I like white papers because it is much cheaper to do. So now I just want to go over with, there's a lot of talk now about you want your brand or your products to be science backed. But now you've actually built the infrastructure behind it. So what makes a clinical trial specifically really meaningful for a wellness brand?
So you just mentioned, with the white papers that things seem too good to be true. I would agree to a certain extent. Like when I see claims that are like 100%, and we typically see that in cosmetics, right? 100% or 90%. And I think that a lot of consumers also don't trust these claims. So it's more about, what does the actual science say? Because if 100% of consumers saw a reduction in fine lines and wrinkles, I asked myself, what was the scale, right? Was the scale measuring wrinkle depth? And then we are looking at like 1% of a millimeter, right? Then yes, that could be possible. But then also, like, again, what we say in research, right? If something is statistically significant, doesn't mean that it's clinically meaningful, so that the consumer actually sees or even feels a difference. And one thing that always surprises me is that, clinical trials as a method are inherently slow, and we are really fast. Like Citruslabs is incredibly fast in conducting them, but many brands think that because their study timeline, the time that participants actually use a product is 12 weeks, their expectation is that they will get results after 12 weeks, right? But there is like some work that is going into a study before, right? You have to design a study, and we customize each study. So it's not one size fits all, but we want every study to be tailored to our clients. So we customize studies, we customize questionnaires, we customize biomarkers, and then we also want brands to be happy. So then, the brand is actually giving us, the thumbs up that this is exactly what they wanted to do. Then after that, it goes through the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, to make sure that everything we do is ethical and that we are not harming any participants. And then we start recruitment. But then recruitment also includes shipping. So once we recruited someone, we also have to ship product to them. And if a brand doesn't want to pay overnight shipping, it can take, like 5 days, 7 days to actually get product. And then the study starts. And then once the study is completed, you obviously have to do the data analysis and then also write a report. And that also takes some time, right? So that is something that I always think is amusing to me when, brands just think that, oh yeah, the study's 12 weeks, so I'm getting results in 12 weeks, right?
Yes, but that is usually a problem that I see with, or an issue that I see with startups, where everything is always so fast. But then when the science starts coming in and you really start doing the research behind it, then it's a bit of you need to take a step back and just wait for good science to be done to really help your brand in the long run. So that little bit of an extension on time, it does have a really good ROI later on. So now I just want to go over to the business side. You are right in the middle of health and science and business. So when you meet your younger self or a younger entrepreneur, especially a woman, and she's entering this space, what advice would you give specifically to her?
Well, for women in particular, right? I think female entrepreneurs are really hung up by the system is stacked against them. And venture capital is not going into women startups and stuff, and that's all horrible, right? But we shouldn't complain about it. We should just roll with it. And there are many companies that didn't raise a lot of money or that didn't raise any money at all. And they're still thriving, right? The goal of a business is not, and of a startup is not to raise money. The goal of any business is to actually make money. And you don't have to raise venture capital to do that. And the more I look into venture capital, the more I don't want to play that game, because essentially it's a game of making money for your investors, right? And venture capitalists then look at you and tell you that, oh, it's a lifestyle company. Yeah, but lifestyle companies can make a lot of money. And when you look at founder stories, oftentimes the people, that have like these lifestyle companies, specifically from a pure money perspective, are often better off than companies that raise venture capital. Because when you think of from a lens of a VC, right? A VC makes 100 investments, right? And then from these 100 investments, maybe one or two are like a good outcome. And this good outcome means like $1 billion, right? 10x, 100x their fund. And all of the other companies, like 99, 98 of these companies, oftentimes they are not going anywhere, right? They are filing for bankruptcy, getting sold prematurely. So that's an issue that many people don't see, right? If you are not the star of your portfolio, you are nobody, and nobody is helping you, right? And oftentimes, because then when you raise venture capital, you are selling part of your company, which means that, when you have an exit event, which can be an IPO or an acquisition, then you're not getting like the full thing. And then there are also sometimes like levers involved where founders only get something once there's a certain threshold involved. So there are cases where founders didn't get anything, even though the exit was actually quite good. So for everyone who's complaining about that, just think about it. Just look into venture capital, what it means. And in my opinion, like many, especially companies in the healthcare space and in science, are often better off not raising venture capital. Also because when you work in healthcare, VCs still expect you to have like an exit event or something in a 5 to 7 year time horizon. But if you work in healthcare, this time horizon has to be longer, because health moves very, very slow, right? We are going against legacy systems, and to replace a legacy system that's been around for like 30 years, 50 years, it's a very slow process. So you have to either find the right investors, or it might be even better not to have any investors at all, or just if you need some start capital. If that's the case, you can also look into angel funds, for example. And then these angel funds, they are also happy when they only get like 3 times their money back or 5 times their money back, right? And then also as you mature as a company, you can also then buy back the shares from your early investors, which is also very beneficial for founders.
You have raised so many great points, and I really hope that if there's female entrepreneurs listening to this, that they really take notes of it. And I'm glad you mentioned that venture capital is not the only route. You can bootstrap, you can use angel investment. It's perfectly fine, and you will still get to your goals. I want to also ask you about your personal experience. So, how do you personally stay grounded while building in such a fast-paced and high-impact sector like wellness tech and clinical research? Because you are so busy. So how do you stay in the moment?
I have a lot of hobbies. So I like the whole experience as an entrepreneur, but it can be challenging at times. So you have to have something that is countering what you are doing, on the job. You have to have a life outside of it. Otherwise, in my opinion, you go crazy, right? We started this episode with what is wellness. So I'm now telling you my wellness routine. So I ride horses, and when you ride horses, you have to be in the moment. There's nothing you can think about because otherwise it gets extremely dangerous when you are not there with your horse, when you are
Mhm.
jumping or when you are in a cross country course and jumping stuff that doesn't fall down, right? If your horse makes a mistake and is not jumping high enough, is not fast enough to go over a jump, you will have a rotational fall. And then the outcome can be death. So you have to be very in the moment when you do that. And then I also run. I run marathons, and like running is for me like meditation. And when I meditate while I run, I also think about business, but I think about it in a more creative way. And a lot of good ideas are actually coming from when I go on like a 2 hour or 3 hour run. And then I also play pickleball for a more social aspect of the whole thing. And during pickleball, I connect with a lot of people from very different backgrounds. You can play pickleball with like I'm in LA, so I play pickleball um, at like a specific court where there's open play, and a lot of people are coming, and um, they're like actors, and we have politicians, they are musicians, and having this group of like this extremely diverse group like also gives you ideas why you don't even think about it, right? So
Mhm.
that is very important, that you also surround yourself with people outside of your industry and even outside of the startup world.
Yes, and that makes a big difference. So I love that you have different hobbies. Usually, when I tell someone that, yes, I am a scientist, but I also give dance classes, then it's like, what? How
Nice.
does that even come together? But it is literally just for your brain to switch off on the analytical side, and then you can go on, be creative, and then come back, and that creativity streams into the business again. So it's amazing. And I love that you say you are connected with diverse people because that really does give you more energy to put back into your business again. So,
Yeah,
looking ahead,
absolutely. And I think like sorry.
no, please continue.
Yeah, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, they are just, in the zone, and they feel like if they don't do this now, then they are not productive enough. And I also think that, some of the, also going back again, to what is wellness, I think a lot of wellness advice that's out there is about self-optimization. And I think that's good, but it also, can put a lot of pressure on someone, and that pressure then goes into business as well, right? If I don't do this, if I go for a run now, if I play pickleball now, then, you know, maybe I'm missing something and I'm not productive enough. But in my opinion, when you take like these creative breaks, then you will come back and be more productive and more creative. And what I see in myself is when I take breaks, specifically, in terms of, feeling maybe low energy and not really creative, because a lot of things in entrepreneurship is being creative, finding creative workarounds, for example, right? If you are just like always in the zone and working and thinking about like that one issue, then you're losing that creative edge. And then things like hobbies can actually reignite it again.
Yes, totally agree with you on that. So, if you look at the next 5 to 10 years for Citruslabs, what do you think the future of consumer health research will look like?
So right now, even though we do have some regulation with the FTC regulation on health claims, it's still, especially in health and wellness, it's still like the wild west. And I do believe that there will be some changes coming, specifically when it comes to like clinical validation and that whole thing. Because right now the FTC regulation do say that you have to have like you have to have studies that are generally accepted by the scientific community. But a lot of studies and a lot of study designs are accepted by the scientific community. It depends, how you position the study. It can be a pilot study, which is a single group study with like 10, 15 people. But is that enough for the FTC? And the FTC has cracked down on companies that did that. So apparently it's not. So to be on the safe side, right, you have to run a randomized control study, which is typically a study with 2 arms, where you have the intervention and then a placebo or a control group, for example. So I think there's more regulation specifically on the horizon. And also when you look at different countries, right, in the US, you are not allowed, like a supplement is not allowed to make drug claims, right? It helps with IBS, for example, even though a product might help with mild cases of IBS, right? But when you look, for example, into Germany, when you have a supplement and that supplement is sold in a pharmacy, then that supplement can actually make drug claims. Like, this helps with IBS, right? And this would be a claim that would not be accepted in the US. So I think that we are, and I mentioned earlier that supplements are not meant to treat and cure, but I know that some of them can treat and cure mild cases of chronic disease with additional, lifestyle changes and stuff. So I think we are probably seeing more regulation here because a lot of health and wellness founders, a lot of supplement founders are fed up with having to prove a substantiation that's essentially the substantiation of a drug, but not being able to make drug claims. So I think, something is coming on that end.
Okay, I'm excited to see how that evolves in the next few years. And I really do hope that South Africa also catches on to that. Now, Susanne, just for last question for today, what is one book or tool or practice that has had a profound impact on your life recently?
So maybe not super recent, but as a founder, as an entrepreneur, the one book that I really liked was The Way of the Wolf. And it's a sales book. From essentially The Wolf of Wall Street. And there's a lot of sales advice out there, right? That every founder is selling. If you want it or not, every founder has to sell their product. And that book, I'm interested in sales. It's also from a psychological standpoint, like why am I buying this, right? Why am I listening to that person when I'm in a shop, right? Why, even though I did not intend to buy something, but then there was the salesperson, why did I buy this? So I find that very interesting. And that book is to me like the Bible. And it's not like in the whole like business startup world, it's not talked about enough, I feel. And there are like so many great nuggets in it, such great advice in it that's actually really actionable that you can take, you read it and you can implement it right into your company. And that book has profoundly impacted how we sell at Citruslabs.
Susanne, that actually brings us to the end of really a truly inspiring conversation. And I hope this episode gave the listeners a clearer view of what it really means to build and trust science-backed wellness products. And a huge thank you to you, Susanne, for sharing your journey across research, business, entrepreneurship, and innovation, and for reminding us that good science is really not just a buzzword, but it is a responsibility for any brand. Thank you for raising the standard for consumer health and proving that credibility and scalability can absolutely go hand in hand. So to the listeners, if you've learned something new today or found clarity in the often confusing world of supplements and wellness claims, please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us bring more high quality conversations your way. And Susanne, if there's anything that you want to end off with.
Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
Until next time, stay curious, stay discerning, and stay well.